Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Navigating NewSpace, produced by the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship Program. For any new viewers this week, the MAT Fellowship is a highly selective summer internship and mentorship program which helps to nurture the ethical exploration of the universe within the next generation of space leaders. Through some candid conversations with our program mentors, our program fellows, and affiliates, we hope to bring some insight into the mechanisms of the rapidly changing world of NewSpace. My name is Shana Hume, and I am the host for this segment and a 2018 fellow of the program. Last week, we weren't able to take as many audience questions as I wanted. And so this week, I really want to encourage anyone listening to throw questions out in the chat. We would love to work them into our interview. With that said, I am so excited to introduce you to one of our 2019 fellows, Shravan Hariharan. Shravan is entering his last undergraduate semester at Georgia Tech, studying aerospace engineering with a minor in Earth and Atmospheric Sciences. He has already completed 5 internships in the aerospace industry at NASA Langley, Northrop Grumman, SpinLaunch, and the last 2 at Blue Origin. He'll be entering graduate school in August 2021 and is excited to continue building the future of human spaceflight while raising awareness about the industry. Shravan, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, of course, Shana. Thank you for having me. And thank you to the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship Program for putting this together. I love to talk about space, so it's a dream come true.
It's what we all have in common, right? We could just rant about this.
Of course.
Awesome. So I know I already got started with some fast facts about you, but could you just kick us off by telling us a little bit about your journey to space?
Yeah, of course. So like most of us in the industry, I have been interested in space from a young age, but it was in high school where I really found that passion kicking off. And it was something that I realized that I want to pursue for my entire life. I was on the summit of Mauna Kea in Hawaii at their observatory, and we stepped out right after sunset. And from horizon to horizon, I could see the Milky Way. And after I saw that, I realized there's so much out there that is untouched by us humans, and we know nothing about it. So I wanted to spend my life just pushing the boundaries of a human presence in space. So I go to Georgia Tech right now. Like Shana said, I'm entering my last semester studying aerospace engineering and Earth and Atmospheric Sciences. So aerospace engineering teaches us how to get to space, and my minor teaches us what to look for when we're out there. So I've done 5 internships in the past, which has been a great way to learn more about the industry. And I'm excited to continue to do that through my education and then a career pursuing human spaceflight.
Awesome. So your very first internship was at NASA Langley, right?
It was, yes.
That's awesome. We have that in common. My first one was also at NASA Goddard. When you got started in space at the beginning, were you very aware of the commercial sector? And if not, when did you really start figuring out all that was out there?
Yeah, great question. So I really wasn't. I knew that companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin had began to introduce reusability in their rockets, which fascinated me. But all I could think about was civil space through NASA. And it was really during my internship at NASA that I learned about all of the other opportunities, because NASA does a lot of collaboration and work with the commercial space industry, because this partnership is what I consider to be the next step in our industry. So after seeing all of the work that NASA was doing with these other organizations, I knew I wanted to give it a try. So then after NASA, the next 4 internships were all in the commercial space industry. And that's when I really started to dig into the nuances and differences between those companies. And I've learned quite a lot from it.
Sure. And that's a really easy segue. What was working at all these different companies like? What was your big takeaway from working at different companies of different sizes with most likely very different priorities?
For sure. So I think I saw it in 2 main ways. First, I wanted to find the best mutual fit for me in terms of company size and scope, the culture where I could contribute the most and still felt like I was growing the most. And then second, I wanted to lead this industry or become one of the leaders moving forward. And in order to do that, I really needed to understand the entire industry. So that's really why I went to so many different companies of different sizes as well. And through that, I was able to learn how to be a sponge of sorts, soaking in all of the different intricacies and cultures of these different companies, understanding how I fit in to a team as a whole, both my immediate team as well as the overall company. And then how I can make sure that in my day-to-day work, I was always contributing to, one, the company mission, and two, my personal goals as a growing engineer. So I think that I learned how to learn by going to so many different places. And that's what I've brought with me now, in addition to all the great work that they're doing. And they were all amazing experiences.
That's so cool. One question that I had about you specifically was, what did you learn about what you wanted for the future of your career? Like, were you able to take away bits from these different companies to construct an ideal future job for yourself?
Yes, definitely. So I think for me, the three main things I was looking at were vision, so the overall company mission, and then culture, how do the people interact with each other, and then three, the work scope, what was I working on? I'll talk about the last one first. I realized that human spaceflight is for me. I want to see humans become an interplanetary species. And the way to do that is to work on technology and architecture development that gets us there. So that's how I really knew that I could only see myself working at these companies long-term that do work towards human spaceflight. In terms of culture, I love to talk and I love to learn. I ask a million questions. And I realized I needed to be at a place where people are not only receptive to talking about their own work, but also just give me a little bit of guidance and a helping hand because I am so young and I'm growing there. And then lastly, in terms of mission, sustainability is the key word. I think I learned from working at these companies that there are so many ways to contribute to human spaceflight. What I wanted to do is not just work on this technology, but I wanted to work on leaving a lasting legacy, each innovation building upon the next, so that we have a roadmap of how to get to space and stay in space. And I think each of my internships showed me a little bit about one of those three goals I had. And then slowly over the past 4 years, I've been narrowing in on where I see myself ideally.
Cool. If you had to have a vision, if you were, let's say, the CEO of a space company, not too far-fetched, what would the ideal vision be?
This is going to sound a bit derivative. I just finished up my last internship at Blue Origin, and the vision there is millions of people living and working in space to benefit Earth. And that aligns incredibly closely with my personal grade or my personal mission. I want to work on technology to put humans in space and keep them there, while keeping in mind that we do come from Earth, and what we do needs to benefit the people on Earth. So this is through lowering the cost of access to space, which is our biggest barrier to entry, through things like reusability, advanced manufacturing techniques, and new architectures that make it cheaper to get there, which means we can put more in space. And then focusing on the human factors approach to it all, which is at its crux, the physiological and psychological needs of a mission when it comes to humans. So humans are quite a finicky species. We are very constrained in terms of what we can operate in and what we thrive in. So for a human spaceflight company, I would really focus on implementing that, having a human-centered approach to our technology, because at the end of the day, I want to send humans to space, and we can only do that if we keep that goal in mind from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, obviously, but that was beautifully put.
Thank you.
You mentioned access to space. That was actually something in our prior conversations that I wanted to follow up on, because people like you obviously know what access to space means. But for everyone else out there who isn't an aerospace engineer and maybe is wondering about what all of this new space actually means, what would access to space mean for the average person?
Sure. So I understand that as the average person, it's often difficult to take space and understand how that applies to our individual lives. The beauty of the industry is that every innovation impacts people on Earth. And that's done by access to space. It essentially means, like I said earlier, lowering the cost of entry so that we can do more in space. The natural follow-up is, what do we do? And a few great examples of that are things like communications and internet satellites, which are becoming increasingly prevalent in our industry through satellite constellations and revolutionary, smaller geostationary internet satellites, which aim to provide broadband, low latency internet to a wide variety of people over a wide geographic range. The internet connects people. That's what it does. And for us in space, by improving our architectures, by working on our launch vehicles to make it cheaper and quicker to get to space, we can put more of these satellites out there and connect people on Earth like we've never done before. So what access means really is making sure that space is for everyone. At the end of the day, space is too big for one person, one company, or even one country to explore alone. And our goal as an industry is to make space for all through the technology we're working on. There are already several examples of technology here on Earth that comes from space, things like GPS, the Mylar blankets that marathon runners and trauma victims or patients use, and even things like satellites monitoring our weather and our climate change. These all come from innovations in the space industry, and we are now in the golden age where this will only continue to increase. So access means showing on a day-to-day basis that space helps us all, and we are not going to be satisfied as an industry until we make it widespread that way.
Yeah, obviously, I completely agree. I think that what happens next in the future of NewSpace is absolutely essential to inclusion and diversity going forwards, not just within the industry, bringing in all sorts of people, but inclusion of everyone else on Earth.
I completely agree.
Benefit. Awesome. So I actually wanted to follow up and ask you about that. Do you have any goals for what inclusion would look like with space in your career? How do you think that in the next 10 to 20 years, we can really transform what old space was into what we want to have?
Certainly. So like you mentioned, space requires an inclusion of different backgrounds and different voices. Like I said earlier, it's too big for us to explore alone. We need everyone to put their voices and backgrounds towards a common goal. And the way I do that is by starting close to home in the companies and teams I'm working with. Things like not ignoring the differences between us, but tackling them head on and fighting microaggressions and implicit biases that we may hold and that we may see in our industry. The goal is to have no voice feel unheard. This comes first with all the other engineers and scientists on the team we're working with. But the goal is to be an inspiration for others outside of our industry. At the end of the day, we work best as humans when we work together. The International Space Station is a great example of that. And we only work best when everyone feels like they are being heard. So I'm really starting by recognizing first any microaggressions and biases that I may hold. Then by being vocal about how to be inclusive through things like community and ally groups. Blue Origin, where I just was, is a great example of that, with extremely active community and ally groups where we focus on discussing these issues and understanding them better. Because even though, like I, for example, may not feel victimized in certain ways, I have to understand how my coworkers feel in order to bring their ideas in. So that's how I first plan on doing it in my own industry. In my own experiences, but I think it's important for all of us to recognize this and for these to become regular conversation topics moving forward, because that's the only way we grow and move forward together.
Yeah, definitely. And one more thing that maybe your experiences at Blue Origin also inform. People like you and me and other fellows who are coming out of programs like MIFP and like Brooke Owens, we all have a lot of visions for how we want to see the world. And we're bringing a lot of different perspectives that were not necessarily present in the old guard days of aerospace. However, we're still working from the ground up. You don't just get to jump in and insert good ideas and make them a reality.
Certainly.
What role and what difficulties do you think young people are going to have in the future of this new space?
A great question. I think that the role we have is instrumental in terms of bringing a fresh perspective. Now, the beauty of NewSpace is that so many new companies are started every year with different visions and different ideas on how to tackle age-old problems. And what we bring in is we haven't had the old technologies and the old methods of doing things ingrained in us from the beginning. So we come with these fresh architectures that we are willing and able to push forward to see if they work. So that comes from feasibility. But it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because that is the challenge. The aerospace industry has existed for decades now. And there are certain technologies that have been proven to work that may not necessarily be the most efficient. So our challenges are showing others in our industry that it's worth exploring new approaches to solving age-old problems, which requires capital investment, time, and risk. So it's a little bit of a fine line to straddle. And we're doing our best to just make sure that thinking doesn't become stagnant while still keeping in mind all of the lessons that we've learned over the past several decades in our industry.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good perspective on how to deal with it. And I think the worst fear of many of us and people in our peer group is that those things will happen. And we're all putting in a lot of effort on the front end to make sure that it doesn't.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay, so let's switch gears for just a minute. You're a 2019 fellow. Could you tell us a little bit what your experience in the program was like?
Absolutely. So the fellowship experience is incredible, for lack of a better word. And this comes in several different fronts. First, by connecting with an industry mentor who has years of experience. Mine was a former NASA astronaut. I was able to learn from somebody who has done it all and done it all successfully. Now, through this, I was able to see how there are many different paths to reach your individual goals. The most important thing is to keep trying, to not give up, and just to learn as much as you can about the industry. So the mentor is one part of it. Then we go to the internship. So mine was with a small startup called SpinLaunch in the Los Angeles area, which is really working on a disruptive, revolutionary way of launching small payloads to orbit. And at SpinLaunch, I was able to see the entrepreneurial side of things. It was a small, new company that was working on disrupting an industry that had been well established. Mm-hmm. So I was able to see, one, how in a small company it's necessary to have independence that you can then flush out to take an idea from ideation all the way to prototyping and testing and understand how that fits in with the rest of your team. And then also the challenges that come from being in a small company, which was an incredible experience that I learned a lot from. And then finally, the summit itself. So it was at the end of the summer where the other fellows and I were all brought together for a few days in Los Angeles. So it was 24 other students incredibly passionate about space, which was great because I was learning so much from people the same age as me who had done different things and came from so many different backgrounds. I was able to expand my perspective outside of what I had already done and meet many of the people who I hope to work with and build a future with. We were also able to tour and meet, we were able to tour several different companies and meet executives from these companies to talk about their visions, their experiences, and understand what they had already learned from their years working in the industry. And we were also able to push ourselves through debates and trivia challenges to explore our passions for space and how we hope in applying that in our own careers. So it was a professional development event, but I consider it a life-changing event because I not only was able to grow my perspective, I was able to meet so many people who challenged me to be a better version of myself every day. And we all still keep in touch through several group chats. And it's an incredible network to be a part of. But it was just one of the best professional development experiences I could even think of for somebody who was approaching my later stages of my college career.
Yeah. Now, you can pass on this question if you'd like, but have you ever experienced imposter syndrome?
I personally have. So it was at the beginning of my college career, freshman year, where I didn't have that much experience, but I still wanted to get an internship, work in the industry. But I wasn't necessarily as qualified as a lot of companies were looking for. And it was at this time where I thought that maybe I wasn't put up for this industry. Maybe, I had a vision of myself that wasn't necessarily accurate. And that was quite a troubling time because it was so early in my career and I already felt so defeated. The way I dealt with this is by understanding that the only way to move forward is to grow my experiences, to apply it as many companies as possible. I believe my freshman year, it was over 200 companies that I applied to, because at the end of the day, all I needed was one opportunity to break in and show them and show myself that I belong in the industry. So the advice I have for other people experiencing imposter syndrome is stay true to yourself, stay true to your beliefs, and believe in yourself and your future. Because if you give up on yourself, no one else is going to support you. But if you support yourself, you'll be amazed at the opportunities you get and the impact you can make.
Wow, that was a beyond beautiful way of putting it. Really, I think we've all felt it, and that was a gorgeous encapsulation of it. I obviously felt it, and the weird thing for me was I felt my imposter syndrome most strongly after my 2 years of NASA internships, because I knew I could do something, but for some reason I didn't feel like I was making it in the commercial space industry, and I felt like commercial space was just telling me, no, go back to civil space, be a scientist, do something else. And eventually, through pushing forward and gaining new skills, I think at most people reach a tipping point where imposter syndrome starts to go away. And for me, that was the summit. When I went to the Matt Fellowship Summit, I was surrounded by all of these people who never for a moment questioned that I was an engineer in commercial space. And ever since then, the friendship of those people is really what has kept it at bay for me. Because if so many smart people think that we're all okay, they're smart. They might be right.
I totally agree, and I'm really glad that you're able to take it out of it. I certainly saw that side of the fellowship as well. It's this overwhelming support from people who you hold in such high regards and you have so much respect for. And then you realize that this respect is mutual. And it's a great feeling to have that keeps us going.
Yeah. What was your favorite part of the summit weekend?
That is a really hard question to answer because Steve Isakowitz and the rest of the team had plenty of surprises in store for us. But I would have to say that there were two. I can't just pick one. And they were both surprises. We were on the bus. We were going on a tour of different companies. And Steve had asked us, has anyone here met Elon Musk? And a few people had been like, I've seen him around. And then Steve was like, well, we're meeting him in 30 minutes. We're on our way to SpaceX right now. So that was incredible because Elon Musk is somebody who we all look up to, not just in our industry. He is just on the forefront of the public image in terms of technology. He's the real life Tony Stark. And we were able to meet him and talk to him about his visions, his passions, and just learn from somebody who has done it all, who hasn't succeeded in everything. So that was great. And to think that there was another event that even leveled that just shows how incredible and eye-opening this experience was. But we were on the bus, we were coming back from a tour, and we were playing a trivia game. And Steve asked us, who was the second person to walk on the moon? And we were like, that's Buzz Aldrin. He's like, well, if we're lucky, you will see him at your summit reception dinner tonight. And I want to be an astronaut myself. I'm sure that you and many others in our industry feel the same way. And Buzz is a legend for us. He is a trailblazer who has done what no one would think possible 50 years ago, or 52 years ago, 51 years ago is the landing now. And we were able to meet him and sit with him and talk to him and shake his hand. And this larger than life figure was with us and wanting to know about us. So that was great because we were able to see these figures who before, there were several degrees of separation. But then we were able to realize that we were a lot closer to them than we thought. And that was a great feeling to have, just meeting these icons and learning from them, just soaking in all of their experience to help contribute to our own.
Yeah. Less than an hour after those bus rides, by the way, we have a group chat for the 2018 fellows as well. And someone posted about what you guys were going through on there. Oof, man, the entire chat was exploding. That was funny.
Yeah, we were all exploding on the inside too.
For sure. Wow. So moral of the story, if you apply to the MIFP program, if you apply and you get in and you become a fellow, don't leave that bus. Just stay on that bus, whatever you do, because good things happen there.
Exactly.
Okay. So since MIFP, it's been a few years for you now, year-ish plus. You became a fellow a year and a half ago, and you've had some new experiences. Given that and where you see yourself going, graduate school and beyond, what is your moonshot that is in your soul or in your heart right now? Where do you want to see it all go?
I want to live my life knowing that I am working towards having planetary body of birth on our passports and birth certificates. And I understand the gravity, pun certainly intended, of that statement. And that doesn't scare me. I want to work towards making humans in space not an anomaly, but the norm. So that's more of a long-term goal. I want to go to space myself. And until that point, I want to work on putting people there and keeping them there. On a short-term basis, so I'm finishing up at Georgia Tech now. I just finished my second internship at Blue Origin, working on the human landing system there. So I feel really good pushing towards my goals of human spaceflight. I see myself getting my master's degree and then jumping straight back into the industry right where I left off. I feel like the master's will really help me. I have the technical background for my undergraduate education, my internships, but the master's degree will help me specialize and push towards contributing even more to the industry. And slowly but surely, I want to make that dream of mine a reality.
Yeah. I appreciate especially how you manage to use puns like gravity in everyday language. That is a high quality skill that shouldn't be underestimated.
Of course.
Okay, so let's jump back for a moment because there was an audience question just a moment ago. Was there anything really notable when you met Elon or Buzz? Something that really stuck out to you that you didn't expect?
Yeah, so Elon was a lot more soft-spoken than I had initially realized. He is like a tall, broad-shouldered, large man with a very soft voice who's very introspective. So that's something that took me by surprise. And you could also realize when he was talking that his mind moves so fast that often he takes some time to just let his words catch up to it and understand what he's going to say because he's thinking of so many different things at the same time. So it was inspiring to see it because you ask him a question and he was holding eye contact while thinking about how to properly answer, and then go with this well thought out, often sarcastic at times answer in this soft voice where you'd almost have to sit forward and listen to him. So with somebody with quite a large social media presence, I didn't expect him to be so soft spoken in real life, but I think that was just because of how introspective he was. And then with Buzz, for a man in his 90s, he has a surprisingly firm handshake and a cracking, witty sense of humor, who still loves this country and this industry as much as he did 50 years ago. And I had expected that, but seeing it in person was beautiful.
Yeah, that first comment that you made makes me think that if Twitter were a room of 1,000 people, that Elon wouldn't be nearly so loud in person as he manages to be through his presence.
No, I agree with that.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for those perspectives, by the way. I haven't gotten to meet either of them yet, but I am really looking forward to cross-referencing what you just said against hopefully what I can eventually do.
Of course. You'll have to let me know what you think when you do meet them.
All I want to know is the handshake now. I need a comparison to that. Sure. Okay, so a question that I've been asking a lot that I want to direct us to now in the last few minutes of this segment. This year has been insane. And last week I was really beautifully corrected by our last guest on the fact that I left a blank in the question. I keep asking, given all of the blank going on in the world today, how can we justify space to those who don't see its value? And I do want to note, that blank doesn't mean anything. That blank means a lot of the conscious traumas and horrific things that we've seen happening and that we still see happening every day. There have been multiple news events this very week that could go into that blank. And I do think that is something that should be noted. Given the problems that happen all over this planet, how would you attempt to justify space? And do you think it's worth it when everything else is happening?
That is a great question. And I'd be happy to answer that because that's something I think about quite a lot in my own life. And I think that as a bottom line, space is more important than ever now for a few reasons. It is a fact that we are a divided nation and a divided world right now. The differences between people, as well as just the hardships people are facing across the world, are bringing us apart. But like I had mentioned earlier, space brings us together as humans. Space is too big for anyone to explore alone. We need to come together. And this is done on a private, a public, and an international manner. So I think that we can use space as a great reminder and as a great example of how to not ignore these differences, but acknowledge them and use them to bring us closer together. Because at the end of the day, we are explorers as a species. We have started off as nomadic and been this way for millions of years, and space is the next frontier. And there is no way that we reach it there unless we first tackle head on the issues facing us as people here on Earth. So that's from a culture standpoint. The culture in our industry is one of collaboration. Understanding the differences between people and viewing that as a beautiful thing. You can only learn from people if they are different from you and have different voices and different backgrounds. I talked a little bit earlier on making sure that all of our voices are heard. And this is something that is spreading throughout our industry that we hope to use as a platform for everyone in the world to echo. In addition to all of that, space directly does benefit Earth. Like I had mentioned earlier, with things like communication satellites, improving the use of the internet, and the technological innovations that are needed to pursue space further. And even things like mining resources from metal asteroids and bringing them back to Earth so that we can preserve our planet, but still use these resources for the economy and industries that need them. We can focus on the beauty of humans and the beauty of Earth while tapping into space. Space is often seen as something that is so far away for many of us and we don't interact with it. But I want us to see space as this beautiful realm of possibilities that we need to come together for. We need to work together for. We need to really understand each other for. And through that, we can grow as species. We can grow as humans because we are an evolutionary species. And I see this as the next step to becoming better.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much for your thoughts on that.
Of course, of course.
So as we wrap up for today, if people want to continue learning about what makes space beautiful and what brings it value, how can people stay informed about current space happenings? What are your tips?
Well, that is a great question. So I have a variety of resources that I use to learn about space through subscribing to newsletters. Google's Daily Digest allows you to learn about things that specific companies are doing. And spacenews.com and other websites have a lot of newsletters that have this information in a condensed version for you to look at. So that's just learning about what companies are doing. You can also follow on social media things like our fellowship program, which publicizes the work our specific fellows are doing to reach their goals in space. NASA also has an active social media presence. And for me personally, I follow lots of space figures on LinkedIn and read every article they post. And through that, you get a diversity of perspectives and you learn not just about the what is going on in the industry, but the how and the why, which are, in my opinion, equally, if not more important. So, look at all of those resources, share them. I know I certainly do on my own social media, because increasing awareness is the best way for our industry to grow and for people to understand how we are in the golden age of space exploration now, and it is only going to continue growing. And there are only going to be more opportunities for all of us to contribute to that.
Amazing. So if people want to follow you and your work as you become this amazing ethical astronaut exploring the cosmos, where can they find you on Instagram and LinkedIn?
Yeah, so my Instagram is shravan.hariharan. And my LinkedIn is, if you search my name, Shravan Hariharan, you will find me on there. And through that, I'm not the most active on social media, but I do try to raise awareness about the happenings in our space industry. So I would be happy to continue to share my work there and to continue to engage with people who may have more direct questions with me. I'm always open to questions. I love talking about space. I love talking about the work I've been doing and my future goals. And hopefully I'm really looking at inspiring incoming students or professionals in our space, newcomers to our field who want to contribute, because these are our future coworkers, right? And the best thing we can do is help to pass on what we've learned.
Yeah, perfect. I hope some of the viewers feel emboldened to reach out to you after this. I know that you and I and everyone else in the program are happy to have all the newcomers as they arrive.
Of course.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time and your insights so much.
And thank you for having me, Jana. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll talk to you later. For everyone who wants to learn more about the Matthew Isakowitz program, applications will open up early this fall. And in the meanwhile, if you just want to learn more, you can go to MatthewIsakowitzFellowship.org or find us on different social medias at Mac Fellowship. Please continue to engage with us, ask us questions, and learn more, not just about us, but about the space that we occupy. Thank you so much for listening today. See you next time.